Assalamu alaikum. We often use the word modern. It has strong positive connotations. For example, modern technology. Many have accepted the idea, subconsciously, that we are living in the best times ever. That if you were to go back in time, to any time, you'd find that the people there were poorer, less educated, less healthy, and surely less happy. While we can't deconstruct this idea in a short few-minute video, let's talk about some of the issues we face as modern people, and then discuss the impacts on the youth and potential solutions. One of the defining features of modernity is uncertainty. There are many competing ideologies and lifestyles, all claiming to accurately describe the universe, the human being, and our purpose in life. These different ideologies include liberalism, feminism, Marxism, individualism, atheism, agnosticism, communism, socialism, capitalism, fascism, totalitarianism. You get the idea. Each of these isms cause division and confusion, while claiming to provide true human fulfillment, almost as if they were idols. One of the important ideas of modernity is that the mind, rather than the soul, is responsible for human thought and decisions. Everything can be explained physically and naturally without a need for metaphysics. This intellectual revolution of the 17th century was a move away from Christian thought. The thing is, European history had many wars between different sects of Christianity, each claiming to understand the soul and its salvation. And of course, their ideas differed. The Enlightenment theory of an embodied mind changed the way people saw philosophy and theology, psychology, law, and even politics. One of the effects of removing the concept of the soul was that we entered into the secular age, where God was no longer at the center. Rather than focusing on the hereafter, on our salvation, the world of the unseen, the focus shifted to this life, this world. Also, the concept of truth began to waver, and uncertainty became the norm. It is interesting to note that our Muslim predecessors had far less understanding of the natural world, yet had a bigger impact on their societies and human civilization as a whole. We have more knowledge, or at least more information, but less certainty. Understanding secularism is key to understanding this disparity. Secularism can be understood in multiple ways. For example, in Europe, it refers to how religious institutions are under the control of the state, while in the US, it simply means a separation of church and state. The philosopher Charles Taylor states that there are three components to our secular age. In short, they are: 1, that God has no place in our public lives. We work to earn money to build bigger houses. Economics is about maximum profit, maximum gain. Politics is about the greatest number of people. This is the idea of humanism. God is not in the picture. We simply must see our common humanity and employ rational thinking as a means to solve our problems. Our culture and our society have no connection to our hereafter and fulfillment beyond this life. To use Quranic terms, we're only after our whims and our base desires, our hawa, simply trying to please the self, the nafs. People before us were driven by other forces beyond just immediate gratification. And we can see this in their legacies and their contribution to human civilization. Whether it was art or architecture, science, medicine, engineering, astronomy, you name it. They were driven by their faith. And they did incredible things. Their purpose, to please Allah and to serve people. This worldview shaped their societies and public spaces. And in turn, these public spaces fostered, nurtured, and encouraged the highest forms of morality and always referenced the divine. People knew their purpose, and they knew how to find true fulfillment. So, the first component of secularism is that there is no reference to an ultimate transcendent reality. And this leads to a sole focus on the nafs, the self, and our hawa, our desires, under the guise of rationality, of course. The second component is that there are fewer believers, less faith among believers, and belief and disbelief are both equally acceptable. While there have always been believers and disbelievers, and a diversity of faiths, atheism is a relatively new concept, less than 400 years old. Before that, it would have been almost unheard of for someone not to believe in God entirely. Today, it is one of the many perfectly acceptable options, and Muslims seem to rarely question these options. Needless to say, with multiple competing acceptable options, certainty is low and confusion is high. What the modern Muslim is missing, and especially the youth, is yaqeen, or certainty of faith. And more on this soon. It gets even better. Certainty is so low among people that many have accepted that certainty does not even exist. Now surely that's a problem. So, disbelief is normalized, and this leads to a decline in belief in God and religious practice among believers themselves. The third component is the effect of the second component. The acceptance of a multiplicity of faiths coupled with a lack of critical thinking and a lack of questioning, and this leads to doubt, skepticism, and a lack of certainty. Khalil Abdul Rashid, who is the Dean of the Islamic Seminary of America, a graduate of Columbia University, and a professor at SMU, and more importantly, the writer of this article, which I've used to prepare this video, uses the cereal aisle analogy to illustrate this point. The average grocery store today has hundreds of boxes of cereals, tens of different types, multiple flavors and sizes, you get the picture. People spend many minutes, if not 30 minutes or an hour, just choosing what they'll have for breakfast, which would have been completely unheard of just a few generations ago, or before the modern era. A diversity of options creates confusion and a lack of certainty in the option chosen. In other words, not only are we constantly questioning, people have been questioning since the dawn of time, but we doubt the answer before it's even been received. Consider this. Since the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, until just very recently, until the early 20th century, just after World War I, Muslims always lived in societies where the majority were believers, if not everyone, and everything reminded them of God. Today, we are experiencing what has been called the Nova effect, which is the explosion of options on a spectrum from orthodox belief on one end, which we'll define in a moment, to unbelief or materialistic atheism on the other end. Of course, the spectrum contains multiple options in the middle, which define themselves mostly by what they aren't, and by differing interpretations of what it means to experience fullness in life, to have a meaningful life. Orthodoxy is the state of believing what is accepted as true and correct, usually associated with tradition. The word is commonly used in the context of Orthodox Jew or Christian Orthodox. In an academic discussion about the diversity in Muslim thought, for example, one might hear the terms progressive Muslim, liberal Muslim, conservative Muslim, or Orthodox Muslim. An Orthodox Muslim is one who believes that divine revelation has the answer to what it means to live a meaningful life. I hope this all makes sense, but if it doesn't, don't worry. Watch this video over again when you have the time and discuss. Discuss it with your friends, with your family, with your parents, with your classmates, with your teachers and mentors. Also know that these concepts, which might be very new to you at the moment, will become clearer as you go through the course. I hope to see you very soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.